Guys, welcome to Salt City Hoops live postcast.
Welcome to Salt City Hoops live.
That's incredible that we got this win. That is incredible. I'm beside myself for the second night in a row. Jazz are 2-0. I gotta crack open a beer. This is the Salt City Hoops live postcast and beer, by the way. So I gotta crack open a beer here. What do we got today? We got Four Noses Brewing here in Colorado. It's an easy Friday night. I am drinking a Peachopotamus, which is an adjunct wheat ale from Four Noses here in Broomfield, Colorado, which is where I currently live. And Colorado's got some pretty great beer, but I am a Utah Jazz fan, and after beating the Denver Nuggets 2 nights ago, the Jazz win in overtime victory against the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Jazz were down by 17 points at one point in the first half. They were up by 7 with less than 2 minutes to go. The Jazz won this game. And sure, a team being up 7 with 2 minutes to go winning a game might not be the biggest surprise in the world. But with this Jazz team, what we've been accustomed to over the past couple years, it is. It is a little bit of a surprise. We're so used to the team just kind of all of a sudden kind of shorting out and not finishing the job and having the grit. Oh boy, does this team have a whole lot of grit. So I got my beer. I got to pour it into my glass here. I am just thrilled to be here. So we talked about this a little bit the other night, but I do want to emphasize it again today with this whole tanking thing. Let there be no mistake. I am extremely pro the Jazz being bad, getting a good draft pick. This team isn't good. Like, they're not a championship contender, even if there's some magical run where they win 43, 44 games, make the playoffs. They're not a championship contender. I get that. But what I emphasized the other day is that if this team has a great season, that means some good things must have happened with respect to the entire team and who the players and who they are. And so far we have that, which is really, really great. Like the players who are stepping up that are causing these wins are helping the team become great in different ways, and you can, of course, flip those players into other things, or you can build a culture that's good. All of these things that are going right for the Jazz. Is that better than Victor Wembanyama? Probably not, right? Like, Victor Wembanyama is probably that good of a prospect, and even Scoot Henderson at number 2. You cannot possibly discount how good of those things can be towards the team, whether it's Lauri Markkanen becoming a little bit better of a player than I think anybody possibly anticipated. Then he's shown in his entire career. He goes from being a okay starter to legitimately good starter that you want on your team going forward. And whether that means Lauri Markkanen is the player you have 3 years from now on the next contending Jazz squad, maybe not. Maybe you flip Markkanen into something else. Maybe he turns into a couple first-round draft picks himself or something. But the point is, what you are acquiring from the Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell trades are just a rebuilding of your entire team construct. It isn't. You can't just be straight up, let's trade those all-stars and receive only draft picks in return, right? There's a reason Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt were in the trade. There's a reason that the Timberwolves, they were apparently, according to reports, very willing to throw in those 4 draft picks. And they balked at Jaden McDaniels and Jared Vanderbilt. They held the line at Jared Vanderbilt, or I'm sorry, at Jaden McDaniels, but they eventually gave up Beasley. They gave up Balmaro. They gave up Vanderbilt. Those are real players. Those are, and we have to be very careful not to treat these guys too much just as like numbers on a chalkboard sometimes. These guys can play basketball, and maybe they will play basketball to a degree that will actually help the Jazz in the future. Right now, they're helping them be 2-0 again in overtime. And of course, this was against Rudy Gobert, our old friend. What a fun thing to play Rudy Gobert again. Great to see him. Rudy Gobert, I think, had 25 rebounds. But let's talk about the end of the game here real quick. We saw a little bit of justification for those fans who were pretty happy to just move on from Rudy, being that he had the ball under the rim, down by 2, and he was wide open. Nobody within about 4 or 5 feet of him, maybe even 6 feet. And he goes up, he has a good jump for it, but he doesn't go up very strong, and Mike Conley is able to fly over. And I don't think I've seen Mike Conley jump this high in my life. Mike Conley was able to get his arm around Rudy's elbow and prevent the shot attempt. Fouled Rudy. Rudy did not get the and one, even though he's 7'2" and strong as an ox. 23 rebounds, by the way, I confirmed that. 9 points, 4 of 10 from the field, 23 rebounds, 2 blocks, 4 turnovers for Rudy today. Goes to the line. Timberwolves are down by 2 points. He misses them both. Right? On the other end of the floor, apparently Austin Rivers is a member of the Timberwolves closing lineup, which he probably won't be come playoff time pending health of the Timberwolves. But for him to get more playing time than Bryn Forbes today, I thought was telling. That's a little bit of a deep cut. And Austin Rivers ended up only playing 8 minutes, but I think it was notable that he was in there at the game. So Lauri Markkanen gets the switch and ends up hitting a you could call it a tough mid-range contested pull-up, but it was against Austin Rivers. And, Lauri Markkanen's 7 feet tall. It's kind of a good shot, like an okay shot. Jazz go up by 4. Ensuing possession, Karl Anthony Towns attempts a 35-foot three-point shot. That missed. That was game over. 4-point win for Utah. Also, before Mike Conley made that game-saving foul on Rudy Gobert, he hit a beautiful rainbow three-pointer. And I think that also goes to show how good of a shooter he is. I love it when a player can really alter how they're shooting based on the contest. It was a pretty well-contested three-point attempt. Clarkson gets a beat, drives in the paint, has Rudy, and Clarkson does a beautiful, kind of containment of Rudy. Clarkson rises up as Clarkson does, and he's at the rim, and he gets Rudy all the way off of his feet. And Jordan Clarkson knew he wasn't going to shoot it. He immediately whips around, finds Conley behind him, and it was a fabulous pass. But Clarkson really knew what he was doing, and got Conley the ball. Conley had a clean shot attempt, but it was contested, and Conley gave a high arcer as opposed to his normal kind of like a mid arc, and he drained it, and that ended up being kind of the winning points for Utah. I think Minnesota ended up tying it, but those were 2 clutch plays for Conley. I'm beside myself, friends. The Utah Jazz are 2-0 after we thought they would be pretty much dead in the water. Welcome again, Salt City Hoops live postcast. I'm Mark. I love the Jazz, and I was kind of looking forward to the season, just kind of seeing the young guys, seeing what would happen. I have no, this team is going to eventually falter. They're going to lose a bunch of games in a row. They're dangerous and weird right now, and you can just fuck off if you're not having fun. You don't, if you're tuning into these games and you're groaning and begrudging the team winning, just go away. You don't have to watch. You can go do something else. And if you're well, whether I watch or not, well, I'm still going to be upset about them not completely folding on the season. I guess my 2 things to say that is, the first is you don't have to worry about the grand plan. Come March and April, either this team will be in playoff contention or play-in contention, which is a thing worth fighting for, or they will have definitely entered full tank mode, and they're at 6th or 7th worst team in the league, which the percentages if you're familiar with the new lottery odds from a couple years ago, they are not they're not as grand as they were like 10 years ago, where the top losing record had a 25% chance of getting the top pick. If you have the 6th or 7th best odds, you have kind of only a marginal difference in the odds you have against the number 1 pick than the worst team, right? So you combine that with the new play-in tournament, and the NBA has clearly incentivized teams to go for it, but it's also not that bad if Utah ends up being 500 come December. By the way, their beginning schedule, I know they started at home against Denver and on the road against the Timberwolves, which were supposed to be 2 losses, and they're 2-0, but their beginning schedule is still really, really, really fucking hard. So I'm not too worried about where they go from here. Just topping off my pint glass here. This beer is delicious. Great for a chill Friday night. It's only 4 points. This is probably the lightest beer that I've had on this postcast. I'm usually drinking the 8, 9, 10, 11 percenters. But we got a little baby 4.5 today, but it is delicious. So the reduced lottery odds are the first thing that I would say, don't worry about it. Like, it's okay if we finish 6th or 7th worst. You don't have to be the first worst. Also, I just can't imagine how much it sucks to lose 60 plus games and end up with like the 3rd pick, right? It is a deeper draft, right? So it isn't victor or bust. We're not in a situation where there's a paucity of talent at the top. This is feeling like another like LeBron style draft where like, yes, there is an obvious number 1 guy who is going to lead their team into like immediate kind of relevance, if not contention. But there's also Chris Paul's and Carmelo Anthony's out there that matter. Chris Paul was not that draft, I'm sorry, but like Carmelo Anthony's of the world, right? And everyone's immediately thinking like, of course Utah's going to end up with the Darko Milicic of the whole thing. So we'll see about that one. The second thing is kind of what I was getting at the beginning, where I'm sorry, but like this is fun. Like winning is a little fun, and the way the Jazz are winning is also beyond enjoyable, right? What I mean by that is the hustle and the speed and the creativity and the je ne sais quoi, if I could use a French term while we're playing Rudy. I don't know what. There's an energy and infectiousness about the way this team is playing that doesn't always lead to the cleanest basketball, but it is fast and it is smart. And a lot of times in these games when Utah would get close, we would get overtime, or we'd have a 7-point lead with 2 minutes to go and choke it away, this team became so slow, right? They would have one pet action, usually led by Donovan Mitchell, meant to give Donovan a shot attempt. Or there would be like one outlet, like if Donovan ends up getting super bottled up, there was just like one outlet available, right? This team is way more egalitarian because they have to be. There is no star in this team, right? Like the best scorer is Lauri Markkanen, but there's a lot of talent elsewhere on this team, and not so far as like, oh, there's a top talent, but there is more. Like you can do, if you're running a play at the end of regulation or the end of overtime, it can just be like, okay, this isn't a Donovan Mitchell clear out. This is a what can we do to exploit that defense? And the team is totally bought into that. So that it's really fun to watch, especially at the end of a quarter or in overtime when like this team it's not clearing out and just being like, all right, like 2 points our way, 2 points their way, and see what happens. Eventually that style does win out, but you have to have a Kawhi Leonard. You have to have a Stephen Curry. You have to have players who it behooves you to do that one-on-one, this is our best guy, he's going to shoot the ball style. Which, by the way, I invoke Stephen Curry's name there, but the Warriors at the end of a game always had good shit to run. always. It's always helped by having a genius facilitator like Draymond and two threats like Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson, and then a third threat in Kevin Durant at times. That has helped them for sure. It's egalitarian at the superstar level, I guess. But Donovan Mitchell just wasn't good enough, right? He's had those couple moments against the Nuggets in the bubble, but like he's not that good to just be like one-on-one, clear out, it's Donovan's show, because good enough defense can bottle him up, right? Like he's not going to have that reliable gunning like a Damian Lillard, right? He's just a half tier below those guys, as much as I love him. So you end up with this egalitarian style that anyone can really be the star, right? Is it going to be a Beasley 3, a Conley 3, Clarkson 3? Clarkson had 29 points today. He was fabulous. Or is it going to be a Markkanen taking advantage of who's on him, right? If he's playing small forward and he's got little guys on him, which was pretty much the whole game, yeah, sure, Markkanen's the guy. But it's not decided like at the beginning of a possession. It's decided throughout a possession. Like, here are our options. We are coached that these are where the options will be, and we're just going to play the only way we know how, which is egalitarian. So you end up with a really fun passing style of basketball. I think I'm already hearing people in my ear saying, Mark, the last play of regulation, the game was tied. Then the Jazz had the last shot. We had 4.5 seconds to get a playoff. We inbound in the front court. Not the front court, but in our offensive zone. The inbound is supposed to go... the inbound goes to Lauri Markkanen at the top of the arc. A little bit to the right, but top of the arc. And he's pretty much supposed to find a streaking Colin Sexton who has started a full sprint from the other end of the floor, from the defensive zone. He is doing a full-on sprint, and he's meant to get some sort of handoff or just beat his man. And if he's unable to do it, then Mike Conley's available for a quick dribble handoff. Well, both those got snuffed out, which I thought was interesting. Good defense by Minnesota. So Markkanen ends up with the ball. Clock's ticking down, and he's got Rudy Gobert guarding him. And I mean, this is just, it could have been just it was already a little bit of a chef's kiss, playing Gobert and beating him the way we did with him missing the free throws, but it was almost real perfect. I've been the loudest proponent of anyone I know that Gobert can guard the perimeter. Like, he's way better than you think. So he's guarding Lauri Markkanen, and Markkanen takes a right dribble. And in Gobert's mind, he's thinking, Markkanen doesn't have dribble moves in his bag, right? That's part of the reason Gobert is good on the perimeter, is like he kind of knows when guys go right, when guys go left, how likely they are to keep going, how likely are they to pull up the mid-range, how likely are they to go all the way to the rim, how likely they are to step back. If you recall his great defense against Paul George in the playoffs a few years ago, it's pretty much because he knew Paul George was going to step back, right? He's such a smart defender, and he's very agile. So Markkanen dribbles right. And Markkanen, he gets to the mid-range. That's what he likes to do. Markkanen hit a delicious mid-ranger over Gobert. I don't know how it wasn't even blocked. I was stunned that he made it today. But like Markkanen, when he dribbles, he's trying to find a spot, right? Like this very European style. Let me get to a spot and do a little fadeaway or something like that. And he did a right to left crossover step back 3. And this stunned Rudy. Absolutely stunned him. So he does this step back 3, and it goes in and out, or just barely hits kind of hits the rim, almost went in. Markkanen had a world of space because he juked Gobert out of his shoes. And I had no idea Markkanen. It was a good crossover. It wasn't like a slow big man 7-footer crossover. He had it down by his ankles, and he gave a very slick, agile right to left crossover immediately into the jumper. It looked really good. Markkanen's going to hit a few of those this season. I'm pretty excited about that. So, wow. So we didn't end up getting the fun win. The fun jumping game-winning shot over Gobert, but we had a great overtime period. Let's get into the players who played really well today. Again, Jazz win. Who would have thought? I'm very excited about this. Whew. Players today. So obviously I have on the screen here Lauri Markkanen had 24 and 13. 2 of 10 from 3, 10 of 23 from the field. Markkanen playing small forward pretty much most of the game. He was a +7 today. Had a block, had a turnover, only one foul. Really, really good play from Lauri Markkanen today. He's the Jazz's best player at this point. There are things he can't do. I'm not walking away from the other night against the Nuggets and tonight thinking like, oh, Lauri Markkanen's the best guy. Like, he is the star player that we want for, like, he's going to be an all-star type of player, I should say, to be more clear. It's more that he's got this nice all-around game that I just wasn't anticipating. Starting in preseason, by the way. I had no idea he could dribble this way. I had no idea he could pass this way. I watched Eurobasket when he played for Finland, but like when you're playing against limited talent like that, which is still very high-level talent, but it's still not the NBA, thinking, well, he's just the best player on the floor pretty much most of the time. But that's still continuing, right? Like, he had 17 points the other night, and I didn't think he was this versatile of a scorer. He has no fear going to the rim, but it's not this brazen, unintelligent bravado going to the rim. He's a smart angle cutter, and he also knows how to adjust his body in the air. This guy is 7 feet tall. Never would have thought. Talking about brazenness. He dunked over Rudy Gobert today. I should have led the show with that. Rudy gave a 3 out of 10 contest, right? I think Lauri had a beat, and Rudy didn't immediately jump for it. But if Rudy did jump, it wouldn't have changed anything. And Lauri did still have to jump over Rudy to get the dunk, right? It wasn't just he was around Rudy type of dunk that we've seen so many opponent teams say that, oh, we dunked on Rudy. This was a dunk over Rudy Gobert. The problem is that Rudy didn't give his best contest in the world. So I give it an 8 out of 10 on my score. But it was a dunk over Rudy, right? And I think going back to like just the Markkanen's attitude, right? Like it comes off of a pick and roll with Mike Conley, I think was the guard, and Markkanen gets the ball above the free throw line. Like it's a quick slip, it's a quick pass, and Markkanen sees a lane, right? So Gobert's hugging, I think it was Jared Vanderbilt at the time, a little bit too close in the dunker spot, and Markkanen says, I'm going to dunk this basketball, or die. Or die trying. And he dunked. It just like, I didn't think he had that sort of punch you in the mouth attitude and smarts around the rim. Very impressed with Lauri Markkanen. 2 of 10 from 3. That's going to be better. He missed some open looks. Don't really care. MVP of the night. Jordan Clarkson, 29, 5, and 6. 7 for 12 from 3. I don't have my my quarter-by-quarter scores up, but he, I think, had 26 points or 25 points in the second half and overtime. He definitely had 20 in the third and fourth quarter, and I think he had 2 or 4 points in the overtime period. But 29, he was 7 of 12 from 3, and that's just fabulous work. +8 for him. Only 2 turnovers, which I think is notable. And he had guys just on a string. He had defenders on a string, just kind of knowing where they were going to go. He was playing with defenders, really knew what he was doing. Really enjoyed watching him play today. We really did have a lot of bad Jordan Clarkson, though, in the first half. Those 2 turnovers, they were bad. Tossing it away when he kind of got in jail a little bit. Or being too, thinking a guy was there. Like he would drive and think like, okay, I definitely have a pass on the wing, and just kind of throwing it blindly without kind of looking to see, how was the defense cave to his drive. Not the worst turnovers in the world, but like, I get annoyed with turnovers. Overall, only 13 on the night for Utah, which is good with an extra overtime period, not so bad. While they were forced 20 of their own. This Jazz team, I'll quickly go into a little bit of a defense rant for a second. This Jazz team on defense, they don't have the individual defenders anymore, right? Like, okay, he gets like Jared Vanderbilt can defend okay. Walker Kessler, we'll talk about him. He can defend okay, but only at a certain position. Malik Beasley, I've seen called an average defender before, but like he doesn't profile as a good defender. Taylor Horton-Tucker is not a good defender, although he purports to be apparently. But instead, they're all energetic and smart. And so if you combine smart energy, what can you do with that? Well, that means you help pretty aggressively, and you rotate where the obvious passes are going to be from where the help came from. So you see Jazz players get beat on defense pretty frequently, but it would be followed by obvious help coming where it should come from, and then the offensive player thinking, I got to get the ball out to where that help came from and throw it to where the help came. Only there's a Jazz player waiting there to pick the pass off, right? So Utah in the playoffs the past couple years, they kind of executed that a little bit. I think they were kind of poor at executing that, okay, help the helper type of situation. But then you end up playing really smart teams in the Clippers and the Mavericks, really, really, really smart teams with, and Luka Doncic especially is just like a wizard of, he understands where people are going to be. So Utah would help the helper pretty poorly, but like okay, enough to, they wouldn't get steals out of it, but they would at least guard it. I don't know how else to say this, but in the playoffs, you almost need to help the helper who's helping the helper, right? So you end up with a situation where the help defense comes, because the drive is going to get in the paint no matter what. So Rudy Gobert comes in from the corner, has got to help. And you have the obvious help the helper situation where the wing guys slides over to the corner three. Okay, that's easy. But now, the guy who's wide open is the wing three-point shooter, right? And too frequently the past two playoffs, that guy was left wide open. Today and the other day, you really saw Utah figuring out where those obvious passes were coming from. And if the ball didn't go into the hands of a Jazz defender waiting for the obvious pass, take a look at who was guarding those wing defenders. There was a man in front of them, and it was often the man who was beat on defense. That is smart energy that can only be the product of good coaching and their smarts and hustle. And I think it was coached the past couple years. I just don't think the team had the hustle for it. I don't think they had the hustle to get around like that. So you get 20 steals today, and I forget how many steals they had the other night, but it was a lot. They forced Denver into a lot of turnovers. And if it wasn't just the easy passes that were getting picked off, every drive into the paint was immediately met by just people really fucking up the action right there in the paint, which was really, really good. And forcing whoever had the ball to make like a really hard pass that they definitely couldn't make. So we had some good stuff there on defense from some average defenders. Other people worth mentioning, Kelly Olynyk followed out again, but at least he was able to play 35 minutes. He plays a very annoying brand of basketball. He's not my favorite. He's not anybody else's favorite. But he had 4 steals and a block today for a reason. He's a very smart defender who, if you end up posting him up, like Karl Anthony Towns did a couple times, and Towns posted up a couple people to the tune of, he got his 27 points and 8 rebounds, but he was 9 of 25 from the field, because you have a lot of situations where Olynyk would pull the chair out a little bit or really just force Towns into some very uncomfortable looks. Olynyk was Towns' primary defender, I think, for I'd say about 40 to 50% of Towns' possessions. You very rarely saw Walker Kessler having to deal with Towns, which I think was by design. And if it wasn't a center, you might have Markkanen on him, or you might have Jared Vanderbilt, but you very rarely had just like a Walker Kessler type guarding him, which I think was smart. Rudy Gay, I think, defended him 1 or 2 times today too. Olynyk was fine, right? Like, I don't think he's going to hit 8 of 14 from the field. He was 5 of 6 from 3. But Olynyk's threes, he doesn't take, Olynyk takes in-rhythm shots. Like, he's pretty good at knowing when to pick his spots to shoot those threes, which I thought was notable. And so his antics are what got him his 6 fouls, which was a little annoying to watch. But it's all right. Other folks, Jerry Vanderbilt, again, 5 fouls, was in foul trouble most of the day, but that guy is the epitome of the reason that we're enjoying watching the Jazz this year. Just full of hustle, full of energy, and he is the antithesis to a Rudy Gobert type rebounder. He's all over the gym just messing up what people are doing. From a rebounding standpoint, he's jumping over people, but not like an over the back way. He's just kind of like sliding in there and he's always he's always at the high point of the ball. Just a fabulous rebounder to watch. Dude really just doesn't have any offensive feel, which is kind of an issue. He executes the plays pretty well, which is good. But 2 of 5 from the field and 0 of 2 from the free throw line. There needs to be a little bit more there for Vanderbilt for me to really believe in him as like, oh, that's a guy we can keep going forward. Otherwise, let's say 2-3 years from now, and the Jazz are in the playoffs, Vanderbilt's a liability. He's a huge liability, right? You love his rebounding and everything, but like on offense, it's kind of like he has to be the only non-shooter out there, and that's tough to build a lineup around because he's still only like a 6'9" guy. And if you're not going to be a shooter, you need to have a little bit more offensive feel, right? Like be able to convert those offensive rebounds, of which he had 4 today, into points. Like Lauri Markkanen had 5 offensive rebounds today. I think they all went for baskets, or I think 4 or 5 did. So he lacks a little level of overall feel. And I think, everyone talks about Colin Sexton as like this kind of being a make or break year for him to really figure out, all right, what trajectory are you on? But I think this is an important year for Vanderbilt to show that he's got more than just one NBA skill. But his help defense was great. He had 4 steals, so I like it. I think he's a good NBA defender, elite rebounder. Need a little bit more. I want to keep pushing him, right? Because if you turn that guy into a 10 points a game guy who you can put him in a pick and roll, right? If you can trust him with passing a little bit. He doesn't need another elite NBA skill like rebounding, but can he turn into just a little bit more well-rounded? You end up with a really special player there. Colin Sexton, surprised he only played 19 minutes, and I think he might be on a mild minutes limit because I think he will eventually get more minutes as the year goes on. He's only 2 of 6, but his energy was like he's just got this fireball of plasma inside of him. His hustle and grit is really, 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 really high right now. And I enjoy watching him, and I think he's got the skill to match up with it. His speed's still there. I mentioned the minutes limit. If you're not sure, he did come back from a repaired torn meniscus. He did not have it removed. He did have it repaired, so that's a much longer recovery time. So he's probably only been running for about 4 or 5 months. So maybe just working him a little slowly. And I should mention that Jared Vanderbilt came over from the Wolves in the Timberwolves trade for Gobert, so it is good to see him play against his old team. The other guy who played against his old team, Malik Beasley. A little bit of a slow start for him, but he ended up 3-9 from 3. A couple big shots, 15 points from him, pretty decent defense. Really liked what we saw in Malik Beasley today. Rudy Gay wasn't a total loss today. Played within the offense, was fine. Didn't mind his performance at all. Would like to hit him for him to have made one of his 2 threes or made one of his 2 free throws, but that's okay. The guy I'm really going to save my ire for is going to be Taylor Horton-Tucker, who I think is not an NBA player and I think shouldn't have been on the floor today at all. Just a miserable time watching Taylor Horton-Tucker play. Hijacks offense, misses shots, attempts shots he shouldn't be taking, completely messes up the offense. His defense is full of fouls. He was caught on a 2-on-1 fast break, and he's known for these ridiculously long arms for his height. I think he's got like 7'1" or 7'2" arms, and he's only a 6'5" guy, so he's got these giant arms. And I mean, the issue is he feints towards the guy with the ball, which is fine, and he goes to contest the guy who actually takes the shot, which was Jalen Noel. And it's like, okay, contest the shot. He smacked that dude clear across the face, didn't even come close to the ball. Gets the foul, Noel makes the bucket. And he's a useless player. I don't like seeing him there. So didn't appreciate his minutes, but I appreciated literally everybody else's minutes. Walker Kessler had 4 blocks today, including 1 on Rudy Gobert. He was great defensively. Loved watching him play. He still has an innate feel. Walker Kessler has a very good innate feel for defense. He goes straight up. He had all 4 of his blocks today were super legit. Not even close to debatable calls. Great defense, and he's got good feel on offense. He's just got to improve pick and roll activity, right? His screening is still like kind of soft compared to what we've seen from Rudy Gobert, one of the greatest screeners in the league. But he's already like a good NBA center, like a starting level NBA center. I think Walker Kessler is, to the tune of like maybe like a tier below Ivica Zubats, right? Like I'm not saying he's a good starting center. I'm saying if you had to rank all 30 centers, I think you would put him in like the top 25, like between 20 and 25 for centers in the league already. And what you need out of the 25th best center is just to play 20, 25 minutes a game and just not screw up a lot. And he's already there. I don't know what his ceiling is. Like, you draft a guy in the 20s because you don't necessarily believe in his ceiling, but you think he can contribute right away. Or he's got no actual NBA skills, but he's got a ton of talent, right? Walker Kessler's obviously the guy who has real NBA skills and real NBA athleticism. I don't know if his ceiling is all that high, but can he be part of the Jazz future? I think so, right? Like, if we think about modern NBA playoff teams, right? Walker Kessler can be a guy that you deploy against certain teams for a lot of minutes and certain teams against none, right? And that kind of player isn't so expensive to keep around. So I liked what I saw from him, and I think we will overall. So, quiet Friday night today. I think you're all enjoying post-Jazz win revelry a little bit. I mentioned Rudy Gobert today, 23 rebounds, 4 or 10 from the field. He was great defensively. I think the Jazz exploited literally everybody else on the Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards had some good defensive plays today, but there were a few times we got Anthony Edwards number 2. But Edwards is really learning, and I should clearly mention that Anthony Edwards is the Wolves' best player. Like he was 12 of 23 today, 3 of 9 from 3. And I don't know if he wasn't he wasn't a team leading, but he was up there he was only a -6 today, which was pretty good for him. He was awesome. He took advantage of a lot of Jazz defense at a few times. So I love what we're going to see out of Anthony Edwards. Obvious all-star this year, really good player. I don't think there's anyone I missed today from the folks who played. I just hope we never see Taylor Horton-Tucker have to play basketball again. So, what a Jazz win. 2-0. I'm still thrilled. I've mentioned ad nauseum that this is still good for the Jazz. I'm not fretting about losing a top draft pick. The team will lose eventually. So we'll see what happens going from here. But for now, team is 2-0. And I think that'll be it for this edition of Salt City Hoops Postcast, unless anyone wants to drop a comment or ask any questions going on in the Twitter spaces. Other than that, we can get to the rest of the NBA action. It looks like we got the Nuggets up 15 against Golden State, and Phoenix and Portland are tied in the third quarter. So why don't we go ahead and go to those, enjoy that. Jazz are 2-0. I'm beside myself. Again, quick summary. Overtime win for the Jazz after being down 17 in the first half. We thought, all right, this is it. This is the Jazz loss. The starting lineup looked bad. The bench looked worse. They ended up clawing back to being within 9 points of halftime. The starting group that came in to close the second quarter really turned it on and brought the team back, led by Lauri Markkanen having a great end of the second quarter. I think Malik Beasley came and really helped out with that second quarter push. So we're within 9 at the end of the second quarter. Third quarter, we completely kicked the Wolves' ass, beat them by 10 in the third quarter. Jordan Clarkson went off in the third quarter within himself, though. He didn't go crazy overall. Markkanen took advantage of things. Olynyk had a couple nice plays. Markkanen did have a dunk over Gobert in the first half, which was fun to see. And then in the fourth quarter, we just kind of we went punch for punch in the fourth quarter with Minnesota. Clarkson continued his hot streak, and Mike Conley had a couple game-saving plays. Mike Conley hits a 3 to I forget if it was to tie or to go up by a couple points, but Mike Conley hits a clutch 3 at the end. Jazz are up 7 points with under 2 minutes to go. Slowly gets chipped away by Minnesota. Minnesota is down 2, and they find Rudy Gobert wide open under the rim. And Mike Conley's second game-saving play was he flew in out of nowhere and grabbed onto Rudy Gobert's arm and forced Rudy Gobert to take 2 free throws that he missed both to take the lead. Or to tie the game. Those would be to tie the game. Wolves come back. They get the 2 points to tie the game. Ends up being a Lauri Markkanen possession to end regulation for a game winner. Right to left crossover, puts Rudy Gobert on skates, misses the 3. Go to overtime, and the Utah Jazz just executed really well in overtime. Very egalitarian offense that really ended up with a nice, healthy 6-point overtime win for the Jazz, which was just really, really, really fun to watch. Regardless of what you were cheering for, if you're a Jazz fan, I just feel like you watch these games and you're just like, go Jazz. Like, if you're cheering for losses, you still end up feeling like every time a bucket goes in or a stop was made, you felt great about it. And that's how I felt today. And I had a great night. And I hope you do too. Till next time, this is Salt City Hoops Postcast Live Edition postgame. We'll do another one tomorrow. Or the next day. Whenever the Jazz have another game. We'll do it again. Y'all are great. Have a good night. Go Jazz.